Decided to pull over here and make a video. Show you my office view. Not a bad gig. So I'm going to talk about a bunch of different things. It's going to be all over the place, but in general, there's a subject I want to talk about. This 5 stages of acceptance, or 5 stages of grief. Denial, negotiation, anger, depression, and acceptance. And we're going to try and take it to the next level and help with this mental plasticity thing. So first, let me just throw something out there real quick. Just a little side note. It's not that little. May, June, July or August of 2018, when the first plasma fire that I ever documented hit Spanish Fort Canyon, my brother-in-law lives up one of the offshoots of Spanish Fort Canyon. The fire was coming in from all around them, and they blocked off roads. They had to take the long way home, go like an extra hour out of the route to get home for the next month, because after the fires, they had roads closed. While the fires were happening, my brother-in-law said there was smoke all around and blue sky straight above. And that's the only reason he looked up, because he noticed there's blue sky straight up, but smoke all around. And when he looked up in that blue sky, there was a flashing star, pulsating bright light in broad daylight, like a fiber optic laser, like the Athena. And when you crack the magnetic field and you got plenty of charge coming in, those 18 shots on the bridge, Spanish Fork Bridge, where I say 18, fiber optic laser hits the same bridge 18 times like they were target practicing. So this is both uncontrolled, undirected energy when you open the magnetic field and it just comes pouring in. And at that time, you also have the ability to place your shot. So just thought I'd mention that my brother-in-law saw a bright flashing star in the middle of the day during those fires when there was smoke 360 and a blue sky patch above his head. Just to throw that out there. We'll get back into some of that. But for now, I'm going to make an example out of a guy, but not to embarrass or humiliate or harass him. For the purposes of being able to see that this is some heavy info and that people go through a process in trying to digest it and process the information, and it is life-changing. So he says in the comments section, who cares? What's it matter? Make your point or shut up. And he keeps coming back to say that same comment over and over. And I think he's like a real viewer, like not just someone trying to be a troll, like a real viewer. Because like in other videos, he's commented about how the band Rush has a drum player that was a visionary and could see through the veil. And we're going to talk about that seeing through the veil right now, after this. And so he's demonstrating an insanity on a couple different levels. One, the textbook definition, keep doing something over and over and expecting a different result. That's textbook definition, one of the definitions of insanity. Going back to the same YouTube page all over and over and telling him, I don't like hearing you talk about that stuff. That's one level of the insanity, going over and over and expecting something different. And the one that we all know, don't tell me to stop talking about it. All you have to do is stop listening about it. You had to actively come here and push play. And it's telling that the only guy talking about it, it's disturbing to him. He doesn't want to hear me talk about it anymore. And emotionally unstable people, you can see this in the libtard agenda. Emotionally unstable people demand others alter their behavior until I can feel okay. That's the libtard agenda. If I'm offended, you need to change something about what you're doing because I'm offended. And my feelings, you need to change your behavior until my feelings are okay. And that's essentially what he's doing. I'm the only guy out there talking about it, yet it's so disturbing to him, he wants to come tell me to shut up. I ain't mad at him. Any more than you'd be mad at a kid who's learning to walk and falls and stumbles upon their way. You wouldn't get angry at them for not knowing how to walk from birth. It's a learning process. And what he's demonstrating is a little bit of 1 and 3. Denial, negotiation, anger, depression, and acceptance. He's demonstrating a little bit of denial and a little bit of anger. If you just shut up, if you don't have a solution or a point to make, what does it matter? Why do you keep talking about it, right? That's anger as a form of denial. If you would just shut up, I could not think about this anymore either, but you're making it a little hard for me when you keep presenting this evidence? So the denial is just plain denial. There's no plasma fire. Another form of it is like negotiation, when people say, oh, maybe it's lava coming up from the ground. Maybe there's been lava seen coming up from here or there, but that's kind of a narrative that Claudia Albers was pushing, and I have not heard a word about it since I made it clear. Lava coming up out of the ground would start normal fire. Wherever it touches the wood, normal fire spreads. There's plenty of examples you can see of this. Normal fire wouldn't be able to saturate lava wouldn't be able to saturate its way up through the middle of the tree. The idea that it's lava is ridiculous. It's electricity. So the 5 stages are denial, negotiation, anger, depression, and acceptance. Denial. Oh, there's no such thing. It's a little hard to stay in denial when the evidence is presented to you. It speaks for itself. And it's a little bit hard to negotiate too. But the form of negotiation comes in, well, maybe it's electricity, but I'm sure it's nothing new and someone else knows about it besides you, and it's not the big deal you're making it out to be. And the way that they give these people what they're looking for is to give it a name, like scud clouds or wet moon. Scud clouds, you know, the ones that move lower, faster, and in a different direction than the other clouds. Oh, scud clouds. The weatherman called them scud clouds. See, nothing new. He already knows about them. Wet moon. Oh, when the moon, instead of right half, left half, it's bottom half. That's a wet moon because it can hold water, you know, and it looks like a bowl. And it says so on the Farmer's Almanac online. They give it a name to normalize it, have that name come out of the mouth of some credentialed official authority on the subject matter. And you assume, oh, all they have to do is give plasma fire a name, and the normies will act like, oh, it's always been that way. So as we work through our stages of, we'll go back to these 5 stages many a times throughout these talks. I don't want to drive it into the ground. But as far as seeing through the veil, this is where I want to help us take this conversation to the next level. And I don't even have to present you anything more, though I will. What I've shown you already in regards to the airborne aircraft carrier should be enough to take you to the next step where you can recognize, okay, he did somehow extract images of something that's really there on the other side. Pixels don't take those forms. You can see that is the blueprint of a large machinery. And those triangles that are laid out 2 by 2 by 2, a bunch of them right at the end of a runway, and they're not general triangle shapes, they're perfect triangle shapes with 4 fins off the back of each one, looking exactly like our SR-72 and other spy planes that we've had in the past. A triangle with the fins coming off the back. And you can see it repeated so many times. That should get you past the point where you're like, it's pixels and lens flares. That can get you past the point, if you want to, any open-minded person, that not the typical average person, open-minded. It's 2 different things. Can look at that and get over their cognitive dissonance or denial and recognize, okay, there's definitely something up there, and that looks familiar enough to us that we recognize it. And do you think it's any coincidence that I'm showing you the airborne aircraft carrier and they came out with it last week and admitted it exists? You think I affected their timeline at all? Or do you think people are like, you don't have that big of an effect on the world? There's 7 billion of us and you're powerless and insignificant. No, you couldn't have possibly affected anything. So when you can look at those X-ray images of the airborne aircraft carrier and see that, okay, there's got to be something up there. The next stage you can go to is looking at the others. First, when European colonizers showed up on the shore of Native American, South American lands, the story goes, they were in giant ships that were clearly visible, but the natives couldn't see them because it was so far outside their worldview and their paradigm, they couldn't conceive of such a thing. So they literally couldn't see it until the captain of one of the big ships takes a dinghy, a rowboat, a little canoe on into the shore, has a talk with the chief and says, look, right out there on the horizon, you see? Giant ship right there, big one over there. Finally, the chief's like, oh! Talks to the tribeman, tells the tribesman, look, And eventually the tribesmen can see them also. That's what's going on right now in our skies. It's so foreign to people, they can't see it. Along with much of the other stuff we're going to talk about. So once you've gotten to the point where you're looking at those airborne aircraft carrier images, recognizing, okay, he saw something here. And I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to show you the source video from Casey Kidd, where he has a little magnifying glass, a little dome-shaped magnifying glass. You can buy it at Walmart on top of a mirror. And it creates a Santilli telescope. And he's holding it right here outside his car window, wiggling it around and everything with his camera right here and his thing right there. And I took a screenshot of that and zoomed in, adjusted some color contrast, take another screenshot. Grab that new screenshot, zoom into it, run some more color contrasts, take a screenshot there. Grab the third version, now it's zoomed in twice, zoom in some more, run some color contrast, and that's where I came up with the images. I'll include the link in the description from a video called Oops, Christ Did It Again, a play on the Britney Spears song. At that time, I was printing them out on paper because when I would create a screenshot slideshow, they would blur them out and distort it using pixels and interference. They would scramble it to the point where you couldn't even see the images. So I resorted to printing them out on paper and filming it from 6 inches away. And sometimes they would even blur it out to the point where you couldn't even see the paper 6 inches away. They don't wipe out channels for lens flares and creative imaginations. When I filmed the sun tunnel, that's what that was. When I filmed the airborne aircraft carrier, that's what that was. What I can't tell you what it was when I filmed the cathedral, Notre Dame. On the day that it went up in flames, Logic Before Authority caught a single frame from the Westin Hotel across the street from their cam that's pointed at the Notre Dame Cathedral, where you can see one of these black dot craft uncloak and then cloak up again. In that same general scene, I take a screenshot and zoom in and uncover what appears to be a portal in the cathedral with what looks like a cartoon snake sitting on top of it. And there was something very, very unique about this image, because in all the other images that I've ever done the process I just described, you can only zoom in and contrast it out so many times. One, zooming into something normally makes it distort and pixelate out to where it becomes a blur and you can't see anything. Not the case with these X-ray images. They have HD embedded in them to where you can keep zooming and zooming. But even on those, they only have a certain limit of the extent to which you can run the contrast adjustments. You've got 5 different bars where you can run the adjustments on the contrast. Lighting, shadow, contrast, and each one has adjustments within it. But you can only run the adjustments so much. Take another screenshot, run the adjustments on this one, take another screenshot, and by the 3rd or 4th time, you can take those bars and run them from one end to the other and you get very little change in the picture. You've already ran all the adjustments out to their limitation. On that image at the bottom of the cathedral, infinite adjustments on contrast. Just a slight little adjustment. Even after having done the process I just described 5 or 10 times. You still grab that contrast bar and move it just a little bit and the picture starts flailing around wildly, going through a range of contrasts that it still has available within those adjustments. So there's something very special about that image in the Notre Dame Cathedral that I've titled 1 through 8. I just gave them a number. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Starting with number 1, you can see the cathedral, plain as day, no contrast added yet. And it zooms in and out like this with the Ken Burns effect. I'd rather it just be screenshots, but it zooms in and out. And each one, I give 3 shots. So I take a screenshot, let it zoom in and out 3 times. Or you'll see the screen, sometimes it'll zoom in once, out once, and then out a 3rd time. Each image gets 3 shots, and then I take the next one and show you how I've contrasted it out and zoomed in a little further. 3 more slides, Then the next one, I've zoomed in a little further, got a little more contrast at it, and you can see where it goes from the cathedral down into the portal. I'll get a little further into that another time. My point is, the videos in the video I titled, Oops, Christ Did It Again, are from Casey Kidd's little Santilli telescope he held out his window. There's others that I'll include the links in the description of this video, called Floating Fortress, Airborne Aircraft Carrier, City in the Sky. I don't remember what I titled them. But it's from a video that I took right out my front door where you can see the cloud, a hole opens up in the cloud. And I'm looking at my video, I'm like, whoa, what was that? So I take a screenshot from right where that hole opens up, do the zoom and contrast, out comes structural design. I did it with the black craft that's in the smoke behind Mr. MB3 in the Woodbury fire. And what you can see there, after I run the contrasts and zoom, is a structure of intelligent design. So this method, this technique, that came quite by accident, by the way, the only way I figured out how to do this was the thumbnail photo. I noticed there's some lines or something in the background, and ultimately what it does with the thumbnail photo is the same thing as it does with a GIF, GIF file. Reduces the color spectrum from infinite down to a couple hundred on a GIF file, which is like a short video where it splices the frames together. And so I noticed some stuff in there, and so I grabbed a screenshot and started highlighting and contrasting and pulled it out. And then at some point I realized when I make a GIF, which is like a short movie, an edited movie, it would do the same thing and I'd be able to see some stuff in the background. And then so I contrasted it out again. When I first made the videos titled Oops, Christ Did It Again, I wasn't even running my own contrast yet. I could see it in the background. I would send these images to Staples. The guy behind the counter at Staples would run the contrast for me and give me the papers. So a lot of those papers, I don't even have the original digital image. I have the original digital before the contrast was added, because the guy at Staples added the contrast, printed it out, and handed it to me. So I don't have the contrasted version of some of those original images. Once I started figuring out how to run my own contrast on my phone, in the gallery part, it's not Photoshop or anything, it's just the gallery photo editor that you have in your phone. I started running my own contrast and I was off and running now. What I'm helping you understand here is that whatever it was I was doing with that phone was seeing real stuff as indicated by the airborne aircraft carrier and those images you recognize. Right angles, triangles at the end of runways, parked 2x2. There's plenty of others, and I will produce another video showing you these images that come from the contrast. But I did it looking into Casey Kidd's little Santilli telescope. I did it on a video that I took right out my front door. I did it on video from Mr. MB3. I did it on video from Fullerton Informer, where he's filming the sky over a military base saying, this is, you guys, what's up with these skies? And I see some of those black dots in the background. Run the contrast. UAP over military base is what I titled that one. So what I'm trying to help you understand here and get over through those 5 stages of denial, negotiation, anger, depression, acceptance, there's some of you that are already there. You don't need me to show you anymore. You know something super duper natural is happening here. And you don't need me to prove it to you. And I want to be able to have these conversations with people that we need to have less of a language barrier. You're no longer able to have one conversation with the no's and the no-nots. Well, I want to take this group of no's and separate it out into super no's and just have conversations where we can have discussions where we don't need to explain all this or prove anything to anyone that's still in one of those earlier stages. So if you're to the point where the most recent videos I've done showing you these X-ray images of the airborne aircraft carrier have convinced you that that really has to be something on the other side, Whether it's the veil spoken of in the Bible, or what I call the PCD, like a LCD, liquid crystal display that you buy for a flat screen TV, plasma screen, liquid crystal display, plasma, powder crystal display, barium salts. Same thing. So whether it's something artificial and new, or just like the little black spot on the sun today, it's the same old thing as yesterday, and it's always been that way. Through this color contrasting operation I do with the phone, I was able to see through that veil and pick up some stuff that you can see and that they've acknowledged now, airborne aircraft carrier. Without them acknowledging shit, you should be able to look at that with your own eyes and go, that's gotta be a airborne aircraft carrier. Or a floating fortress or a city in the sky. But it's definitely machinery, architecture. Once you've gotten past that, say, okay, he is able to pick up something using that phone contrast thing. Then you're ready to go look at some of these others. Once you're on the learning curve and you got past that first denial stage, and then you've gone through the negotiation, well, maybe you're picking up something, maybe it's like reflecting and glaring and looking at the electronics on the inside of the camera or something. I went through all these phases too, but once you're to the point of acceptance that camera trick works, you're ready to go look at some of the other things that camera trick extracted from the reality around us. Until then, maybe I'll make another video showing you more of the airborne aircraft carrier images that should be able to break through your conscious mind and overcome the resistance we have to these kinds of information that's so new and different. We have a natural resistance, a mental immune system. And so this one guy, oh, what does it matter? Why are we even talking about it? So what? Who cares? Shut up already. Either make a point or shut up. The point of talking about it is so that we can get to the point where we can talk about it without it hurting anymore, because clearly you're disturbed. And what I'm presenting is disturbing you. That's what they call talk therapy. When you go to a therapist and you talk about, your problems, you just talk about it enough to where it doesn't hurt to talk about it anymore. Considering I'm the only guy talking about it, but it's still disturbing enough to him, he has to keep on coming back and telling me to shut up. That's a good example of the alternative for those who have not worked their way through these processes in regards to this paradigm shifting information that's coming at us from multiple angles. The alternative is acting erratically and irrationally, like going on some guy's YouTube page and telling him to shut up because you're so disturbed. You're emotionally unstable, and in order to regain your balance and stability, you need him to change his behavior. That's just a very small, minute example of the irrational, erratic, insane behavior that a person does if they don't go through the process, before they've gone through the process, before they've processed all this information, while they're still harboring it in limbo. They run out in their front yard and mad dog the guy that's filming the fucking telephone pole. They get on his YouTube page and tell him to shut up. It's my worldview too you're breaking apart here. My parents tell me, yeah, shit you just keep saying keeps coming true. You just need to shut up. Me talking about it isn't what makes it happen. But I'm going to entertain the idea for a moment, because it's like Matt was saying earlier. It's basically the law of attraction. Whatever you focused upon, you'll see it manifest in your reality. If we were to entertain that notion, maybe that's why I see it everywhere I go and no one else does. But now we're starting to see other people send it back on the phone, showing me that it's in their area too. Did it just manifest in their area after they became aware of it? That whole law of attraction thing only goes so far. But this will come into the conversation, and by the time it does, most people will still be at square one. Erratic, irrational, insane. Because it was said that the next cleansing of the earth will be done by fire, and that the Antichrist can draw fire down from the heavens. that 1/3 of the Earth's trees will be burned. We're there on all three counts. But just like people who didn't hear full disclosure that, yeah, we have downed alien craft and the technology we've gleaned from that's going to change our lives, just the same way they went, I didn't hear that. I'm going to keep looking for truth. The tolling of the division bell has begun. All right, I'll just say it. On the day Notre Dame burned, I created that video titled Judgment Day has begun, and it's more than 24 hours. You know the song, For Whom the Bell Tolls? Judgment Day has begun, and it is longer than 24 hours. And I think this is the year that the general public is going to become aware of plasma fire. And they will demonstrate some insane, erratic, and irrational behaviors. My question is, how are they going to put a problem reaction solution spin on it? My speculation has been for a long time they can't and they won't, because they have no way. They want to keep you in the dark about this. Typically, the controllers, we call them, their MO, mode of operations, is to let no crisis go to waste. That was the words of Eric Holder, Attorney General for Barack Obama. Let no good crisis go to waste. Because they take a crisis and turn it into a problem reaction solution dynamic. So like they always do, why don't they take the plasma fires and say, hey, there's a crisis, there's the problem, everyone. Give us the reaction, standard reaction. Save me, where's my wallet? Here, I'll give my wallet and my freedoms and everything, just save me. Someone do something about this. They present the problem, get you to react, and then provide you the solution, but they have no solution. Because there's a new sheriff in town. Beyond the fact that we're going through a pole shift, it all coincides. Pole shift. The last EMPCO, electromagnetic plasma changeover event that people are, I think it's a new study within the last year or so, melted buildings, melted brick buildings all across the world that appear to have been hit by some sort of super high heat, high intensity heat, high heat event they call it. Armageddon, rapture, final dispensation of knowledge, disclosure. Did I mention Revelation? It's all of it at once. And so if this is the year that the general public becomes aware about plasma fire, and I suspect it will be because they've predicted a record fire season, and that's because we're even closer to pole shift and the magnetic field is even lower, so you'll expect it to be shorting out even more often. It will become the year that they can't hide it anymore, so they're going to have to put some sort of a spin on it in order to try and leverage it and let no good crisis go to waste. The fact that they haven't already within the past couple of years shows that this ain't business as usual for them, or they would have just ran it through their standard operating procedure, presented the crisis, the professional panic puddlers on CNN would tell you how to feel about it and what to think about it and frame the debate for you and roll out the solution. Pay your plasma tax. Whatever the solution might be. But it's not about getting through the storm. By the way, when Trump said this is the calm before the storm, it's a good thing people don't know about plasma fire. That prolongs the calm before the storm. And when they all find out, insanity will ensue. But it's not about getting through the storm, weathering the storm. It's about learning to dance in the rain. What do they say? When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. When life gives you plasma fire, make ornamental furniture, decorative wooden artwork. That's one way of processing it. The alternatives are probably not as healthy and productive and a lot more destructive, self-destructive. And plasma fire is the tip of the iceberg. sun tunnel, moon on its back, portal in the cathedral. This is all just as real as the plasma fires, but to the average viewer, it's probably still not quite as real. That's still stuff that's happening on the flat screen on the phone. And detachment from the outcome, I'm going to have to skip this to the next video. Detachment from the outcome allows you to observe things from an objective perspective. Your attachment to the outcome blinds you. And that's why I've been able to be a truther for the last 20 years and study subjects that make other people cringe and want to back away. Because for me, it's like it's slowed to a surreal animation, like a cartoon screen. And what happens on the screen doesn't affect you. And so you don't have so much judgment of good and bad and right and wrong. And that can't be, because if that's true, then and your attachment to the outcome tells you what can be true and what can't be true. But if you remove yourself from the equation, you can see it a lot more clearly. Easier said than done. But in some ways, that's why Christians have an edge on the average truther. And long ago, I noticed that when you get off the beaten trail of the normies and the drones and the clones, and you get way out there in the wilderness, and you haven't seen another person for miles, when you come across someone, it's going to be a Christian. Because they don't have as much of an attachment to the outcome of what happens here and now, because they've got the afterlife to look forward to. And this isn't the only thing they ever know, so their attachment to this place isn't 100%. People who don't have such an ideology, their attachment to this life is 100%. So their attachment to the outcome is stronger, and it blinds them from being able to see it as clearly. So, Mr. Miyagi teaching Daniel-san, show me wax on. Wax on, wax on. No, you show me wax on. Wax on, wax off. He didn't even realize that he had been being trained until he was able to use it. And we are all getting a lot of knowledge and understanding and information from these experiences that we don't even know we are in possession of until we need to wield that weapon or that tool. Live Like You Were Dying, the song, is all about fear. Rocky Mountain climbing, skydiving, bull riding, fear, fear, fear. But now he's able to live. And the music video, we all float on. COVID, death of the sheep. It was worth it all just to learn from the sleight of hand. That fake Jamaican took every last dime with that scam. It was worth it all just to learn from the sleight of hand. And what you're going to learn from is them using your fear for purposes of mind control. And even those that haven't figured out how the mind control works, they've had that button pushed so many times it's desensitized. So it was worth it all just to learn from the pushing of the button. But those that can see how it works and have their fear response, threat response mechanism burnt out, skydiving, Rocky Mountain climb.